very good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele, and this is the Breakfast Club, a show where we talk about current affairs, issues that affect us in our communities, and a lot of other issues that happen in our towns and cities. And today in our program, we are very honored to have Chairperson Wama Wovet. You know, I've always said with the site is a platform where every voice is heard, despite political affiliation, political differences, religious and regional differences. So today we'll be talking to Andrease Mathibela. He's the chairperson of the Zimbabwe National Liberation War Veterans Association. And of course, they are a voluntary private organization registered in 1990. A lot have always been said by the war veterans. They are the stake and stockholders of the Zimbabwean politics, and we want to hear from him. What is in store for war veterans, but also for the generality of Zimbabweans? We want to hear on a number of issues that pertain to the lives of ordinary Zimbabweans. Babu Mathibela, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Let me start by congratulating you of being the chair of this very influential organization, because the war veterans have been influential in the history of Zimbabwe. From the liberation struggle to post-liberation, you always play a role. But as the new chairperson, let me just start by going there. What's on the menu? What are the challenges that you find on your desk?
Thank you, Zenzele. And thank you to the viewers out there. First of all, let me just give you the background of how we came about. The association has a constitution that determine the term in the office. There was a time when we were, after Jabu Sbanda, we then went to Masvingo. We came up with a new executive committee chaired by Christopher Mtswangwa. By right, constitutionally, he was supposed to be there for 5 years only. For some reason best known to that executive committee, they decided to add another 5 years, which made them 10 years. So we got concerned because the PVO, which is Zimbabwe National Liberation War Veterans Association, has a mandate specifically to look at ways and means of assisting bona fide war veterans to address their welfare. Not only the welfare, as a PVO, our role also is also to check on government whether it meets certain certain obligations. We are not there only for the welfare of war veterans. We are also there to sort of check on government if it's in sync with its policies and its obligations. Now, when we realized that the past executive, by way of the constitution, had overstayed its mandate, we regrouped. It's just an initiative. We regrouped, approached the then Minister of Labor and Social Welfare, of which our PVO is under. We then voiced our concern that the association is no longer, or the national executive then, was no longer doing its mandate to assist veterans. In his wisdom, the minister said, no, look, you can create an interim committee, which we did. And the purpose of creating that interim committee was to prepare for the Congress so that a new executive could be ushered in. With the current state of economy, obviously we needed resources to mobilize so that we could have the Congress. It took a little while. At some point in time, when Mtswangwa got wind that we had those intentions, he initiated a letter which was purporting that the president who was asking that the Congress should be done after the general elections. Yet he had nothing to do with how we, as a PVO, he was only a patron. It was not really the president's business to dictate how we were going to win. But I suspect they'd invited him, and he said, no, look, currently I'm busy. I wouldn't be able to attend. I'm busy campaigning in the general elections. But nonetheless, after realizing that that initiative was from him, Mtswangwa, we said, no, we will respect it. So after general elections, no Congress was in place until my colleagues and I, we decided to raise a few monies, and we did the outreach, and we reached out to 10 provinces. We created what we call a virtual Congress, which at the end of the day, it selected representatives from all the provinces, and then we went to do a virtual extraordinary Congress. There's a difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary. The ordinary is when the previous executive would have then called for the ordinary Congress. But just because they were not forthcoming, time was not on our time, we took the initiative to then conduct the extraordinary Congress. So that's where they chose me as their chair and the rest of the team. Now coming to, because...
So when the extraordinary conference was done and you chosen, was there no resistance from the Mtswangwa faction? Say,
there's always been resistance right until now. But of interest is, because they always hide behind the party, which is the ruling party. The fear, and it's not to do with the ruling party, the fear was those individuals, after realized that they were now irrelevant in the issues to do with the PVO. And I'm saying so to qualify the reason why there was a creation of a Veterans League, for instance. All that had to do with the ruling party. It had nothing to do with the PVO, of which constitutionally an individual could join the ruling, the league. It is one's constitutional mandate. But some of us remained within the PVO, clearly knowing the importance of this institution, because it meant to deliver the expectations and aspirations of the generality of all veterans.
Yeah, so the perception is always that ZANU-PF and the war veterans are an extension of the ruling party. And if you are a league, so that means if you are a war veteran, therefore automatically a member of, does it mean that?
It shouldn't do that, except for those that have vested interest. They would want to try to align a PVO to a... This PVO was approved by central government through a line ministry, which is labor and social welfare, right? Which meant that they also honored the constitution, which meant that as an association, we remain apolitical. Not necessarily apolitical, I would say non-partisan. There's a difference between apolitical and non-partisan, which would mean that as an association, we were not going to be affiliated to any political party. And I still stand today that we shouldn't be partisan as an association. If I so desire to belong to a political party, it's my constitutional right. But I cannot use my position to influence the association to work for any particular political party. So I could say formally that our association is non-partisan. It should be completely non-partisan. What it should be looking for is ways and means of assisting veterans, whether they are in any political establishment or not. Our mandate is to help them address their welfare issues.
Yeah, so now does the Msongwa group recognize you as the chairman of the veterans?
We don't need recognition from anyone. Welfare issues are voluntary. I'm chairman, I'm not even paid cent. I've spent well over 100,000 of my personal money, not for the sake of the position. But I come from a humble background where some of us grew in a village. We were never privileged people. I could tell you one incident where we found ourselves sisidlisithwala sitsheba ngenasingamanzi alechukela ebrow. So my upbringing brought about this kind of humility and humbleness. So when I look at my colleagues who are the veterans, bona fide war veterans, I look at their state of welfare. I would want to assist the best way I can. So that's the reason why I volunteered to be part and parcel of the change that everyone wants.
So now we are in the office. What are the pressing issues? These are the pressing issues that we need to address as the war veterans.
Generally, it's just welfare. When we went to war, Zenzele, we went voluntarily. Personally, I walked for 60 kilometers crossing into Botswana. We went there, obviously we felt maybe black majority rule would bring about, social and economic change to the previously marginalized. That was some of us thinking. We were relatively young. But we went to war specifically for two reasons: political freedom and economic freedom. When you talk of economic freedom, which we haven't really achieved to today, economic freedom means you have ownership of whether means of production, you have ownership of the land, you have title to some of these key economic enablers like land. You have you can also operate mining, agriculture, whatever. At least you have title to that kind of line of economic enablers for the sustenance of your livelihood, your family, and indeed the country at large. Sadly, that's not what is happening. There is a very huge creation of the super rich and the super poor. And here we still purport to be independent. I cannot really put my finger and say that this is where independence lies, because if it does not address a citizen's welfare generally, for those that will clamor that they are independent, it's their constitutional right, because probably they have access to what I've alluded to. But the majority of us are poor, are even getting poorer under our own black government. I don't know where wheels have come off. So the ushering in of my executive basically is to try to address those kind of challenges. The welfare of veterans comes as a priority to us. But we are even going further because we have already realized that we cannot solve the issues for veterans in isolation. Believe me, an ordinary person also is in the same quagmire. Just lately, we see people where they had settled, whether legally or illegally, their dwellings are burnt to ashes, crops destroyed, their livelihoods. You then ask yourself, are you in Zimbabwe? Are you in a free Zimbabwe? I'm always for a peaceful way of resolving issues. And in this case, I would have thought government in its wisdom, because taking into cognition that those who are purport to have illegally settled themselves, or they were resettled by corrupt barons, it backdates to more than 20 years. So you begin to say you are given 48 hours to vacate. Where is humanity? Where is humanity? I'm sure a better way, a better human way could have been done.
If someone settled in a land 20 years ago and the state has never found use for its land, and it's the state land, so 20 years now later, what has changed? Why can't the government then say, okay, you settled here illegally, we are now going to regularize this thing? And because for these past 20 years, people have been paying probably taxes, the land, and what. So the victim who paid the baron or someone or a chief, to the extent ukuthi kwamanye amakhaya eGwanda abantu abachayelwa ihlahla ngobaba babo ukuthi hayi ngumntanami lo wena hlala lapha, we're being fined ukuthi bahlezi illegally. How does that resonate with you guys? Because the purpose of going to war was saying amakhiwa asithathele land. Ngo-1958 abantu babekhitshwa ku-Western Inclusion besiyajikela eCholocho, and ngo-2024 umuntu yakhitshwa lapho ayahlala khona esiyajikela estreetini. Where is the difference now?
The difference is the same, because at the end of the day, we are talking about social effects on community at large, right? At the end of the day, before I even forget, the people whose livelihoods are being destroyed are the very poor. It's on record that we have the already privileged owning multiple farms. For 20 years, let's say for those who illegally settled themselves, for 20 years, there was no effort to find those people alternative accommodation. It is the prerogative of government, and it is an obligation for government to provide decent settlement for its citizen. So, question is, where was government? What has suddenly changed that the government finds it so very urgent to give people only 48 hours to pack up and go? Where still there are even supporters of the ruling party. So there is also a room that the people that are effectively evicting in some cases are officials in government who have interest in occupying these spaces. We are receiving calls. As the chairman, I've received several calls to say a certain minister in the province is the one responsible for effecting evictions. There is another one who is even alleged to have been targeting a certain piece of land so that if the evictees are evicted, then he will put up a school. You look at the priority in general, because the school would be his personal, business, which is going to benefit him. But these poor people have nowhere to go. They have nowhere to start a living. I'm not saying they are correct in breaking the law, but we must be human. I recall the late President Mugabe at some point in time, he said, we make laws that at time defeats the social fabric. Why would you even create that law that at the end of the day we will only make the poor poorer and suffer? To me, my appeal is for government just to have a human face and address the situation in a more kind way.
So you raised the issue that people chase the poor so that they get the land for themselves, which is one of the challenges of our society, is corruption, where people do things to benefit them.
Correct.
And as well, veterans, do you think there's something that can be done to deal with the issue of corruption in Zimbabwe?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For us, this country to have the envy of the world is to deal with corruption as expeditiously as it is necessary. Corruption is one of the diseases which, if it was me, I would have really dealt with it more decisively. The creation of the super rich and poor emanates from this kind of corruption, because politicians occupy privileged positions, not necessarily to superintend over society's interest, but they go there, and I think the reason being that they are only there for 5 years, so they will rather quickly take the advantage of the 5 years to loot and then deprive ordinary people. So, in summary, corruption is one thing that has to be dealt with effectively without delay.
There's one of the issues that the war veterans have been, especially the ZIPRA side, is the issue of the ZIPRA properties that have been going on for a long time. Do you think there is a solution to the issue of the ZIPRA properties?
It is just the willpower of the president. On the stroke of a pen, you must understand how the properties were taken for whatever reason. But it was the head of state and government who endorsed a caveat on all the properties, which meant that government would do whatever they would. But there came a political understanding and agreement during, to me, I would say, the so-called unit accord. The two parties, that was President Mugabe and Ubabunko, that unity ushered an opportunity for the properties to be returned. But we are now, is it 30 years or more? The property has not even returned, not even a single one. I remember Comrade Joseph Msika coming and addressing a veteran, saying now Selitole, I think about 3 farms. But legally they were not, because they are still under caveat. So it's incumbent upon the president, the current president, Ubabu Mnangagwa, to simply revoke the caveat, to remove the caveat. Very, very simple. It doesn't even take 5 minutes. But this thing has been dragging on. While the veterans are dying every day, they will not be able to enjoy. And by the way, the value of our properties, someone had put it at plus minus $20 billion US, which meant that it could even, I even joked at some point in time and say, this 20 billion can even cater for our colleagues in Zandla. It's too much money for us. But we really need it. Some of us have no ambition to rule this country. We have done our part during the struggle. Here we are today. We want to enjoy the fruits and the freedom of what people, some colleagues laid down their lives and lost limbs as a result. But we are far from realizing that kind of it. So, as an association, on behalf of the concerned comrades, it's our personal, it's our collective appeal that the president expeditiously return those properties to the rightful owners so that they can enjoy the few years left and hopefully then leave the rest of their wealth to the future generations.
And it is actually of interest that the ZIPRA properties, more than 100 of them, were actually, outlawed. The ZIPRA organizations were outlawed on the 16th of February, 1982, bringing over 100 properties under some liquidation or under the control of the state. There were farms with cattle, with wildlife. Maybe some of these farms have been recycled people. So now if you get the farm minus the 800 cattle that were there, who compensates for the cattle that was there?
Look, the agreement in 1987 were that all properties were supposed to be returned, and being a business person, you always run your business to earn profit. So I can only imagine that the properties had a potential to generate an income. So this 20 billion intrinsic value was generated from the calculation that had it been in our hands, by now we could have earned that kind of interest. So that's, in asset terms, that is the value, including potential revenue from it. And looking at the cattle, I remember one farm in Slobela. I think it had about 15,000 inkomo, which not even a single one. Now they had resettled people in that farm. Potentially, that is a loss. Chances of us getting it back are almost zero. So that would mean, if ever we have given the president the list of those properties, Magnet, Snake Park, one of them, Niger Farm, already we hear one of our ex-ZAPU senior member went and surrendered Niger Farm to the ruling party, but it belongs to us. It belongs to us. So that would mean, if ever whatever they are going to do, there is a compensation element, and we will put a figure, we will argue around it, but in the spirit of the so-called unit, they have to just do it good. We just can't lose like that. Is as if we have committed a crime. By the way, even the confiscation of the so-called properties, according to the then president, he had confiscated ZAPU properties. So I didn't see what we contributed ourselves, the $50 each from the earning, how it came the ZAPU properties. They were not. So they just summarily confiscated everything else. But we hope logic will come, and then our properties, we are desirable to take possession of our properties.
In one of your openings, you said the organization is apolitical. Or
non-partisan.
Non-partisan, actually,
Yeah.
not non-partisan.
In politics, we are.
Yeah, we are in politics, but non-partisan. And one of the things that Zimbabweans are talking about the need for dialogue, for Zimbabweans to sit together and come up with a Zimbabwe that everyone wants. What is your position as all veterans on the issue of political parties in Zimbabwe sitting together and having a dialogue for a lasting solution? Because we always have disputes. we are on election mode, January to December.
I agree. Without necessarily speaking on behalf of the rest of the war veterans, in my personal opinion, this is what's in my blood. I always advocate for a peaceful coexistence in society, irrespective of your differences. Particularly in politics, we don't call it. We should not call each other enemies. We could be rivals, people competing to occupy a specific position, but we must agree to disagree at certain levels. That's what democracy is all about. But humanely, we should be able to say, what is your problem? To ask what your problem is. Is there any way we can sit down and address the really problem or the differences amongst ourselves? Because politics is just not like sport where people compete for individual benefits. You are doing so on behalf of society at large. Their interest, and I can tell you the majority of Zimbabweans are for dialogue. They would want Zimbabwe, the leadership in politics, security, wherever they are, those that are pulling the strings should just come together. So in my personal opinion, I'm advocating for dialogue. Your enemy today, tomorrow is your friend. We had our enemy, which was Ian Douglas Smith and his team. But they came, what do you call, that reconciliation to map the way forward. What has gone wrong now that we are a black government and you find a black against a black, even brother against a brother, just for the sake of occupying political power. In whose interest does that attitude help, except that individual? Because the common man and woman are suffering as a result. Where giant elephants fight, it's always the grass that suffers. I can tell you, if you ask any ordinary Zimbabwean, they are more for dialogue than a individualistic caring. So in my opinion, and I hope is the opinion of the rest of war veterans who sacrifice their time and energy and even their lives, who'd want to see this country, the politicians marching hand in hand. They have their differences, but it shouldn't be perpetual differences. There should be somewhere where they can find each other for the sake. And this is what we fought for. We fought for unity ourselves. We bore the brunt as the vanguard of the revolution.
Yeah, maybe as we come to a close, for war veterans and the Zimbabweans who are watching, what is in store in terms of your term? What are you promising? What are you going to deliver for your membership?
Right. Whilst we were in the interim, we crafted what we would call a roadmap. And, well, in politics, it could be a manifesto or something to that effect. It's a very deliberate roadmap. We look at the issues we are mandated to address. It is to do with the welfare of war veterans within the association. That's our mandate. And we are looking at the welfare in form of creating enabling environment so that we could also participate in the mainstream economy. We are not harboring for government to always, dish out monies, that's not really then. We've created this association so that we can find a way where we can begin to also participate in the mainstream economy. And that is possible. But here comes the catch. We would want central government, right? That's why in our collaborative effort, we are saying we are creating relationships with stakeholders, central government included, so that in this case, government is a regulatory authority. If we embark on mining activities in order as a way of earning an income for ourselves as veterans, government can open up, can also give us special grants, can also give us exclusive prospecting order. That I can guarantee you, it's one of the best way to empower war veterans. Then we create special purpose vehicles, and we operate businesses like any citizens in this country. There's a glaring discrepancy which government should really take with both hands to say, okay, because government claims to be broke, it's unable to even cater for our healthcare services. School fees are not even paid. My own child, I've been borrowing money to the tune of, I think, between 9 and 12,000 for last year. School fees, it hasn't been paid. And I'm only talking as an individual, but there are hundreds of others who still are facing the same challenges. Do you know, Zenzele, we have solutions. That's why I'm saying if we create that kind of rapport with government and it opens up, we can generate our own income adequate to cater for our social needs and the needs of our families. That is very possible. So it's in our roadmap. Those are some of the things we are trying to address. We have special cases like the disabled. To me personally, and I hope is also the feeling of veterans at large. We have comrades who came from war, some without limbs, some face disfiguration and all that. As an association, it's also our responsibility to give priority to the needs of those people, because some are so disabled they can't even take care of themselves. So our mandate is to look at that. The healthcare services, obviously, government has an obligation to look after us, and is by act of parliament. It is an obligation, but it is failing. For whatever reason it has, I would have thought that, to me, I think it's deliberate. Because by now, even the ideas that we have, if government opens up, and like I've alluded to the aspect of the EPOs and the like, we could be participating in the mainstream. But probably maybe politicians think that once we are economically empowered, we wouldn't be sitting under trees being addressed by small-minded politicians so that they could control us. Maybe that's the fear. I wouldn't know. But it doesn't make sense why we shouldn't be empowered as the people that really brought about the independence to this country.
Maybe one of the things has been war veterans have tried themselves to empower themselves, like was XCOM and other, and these schemes have collapsed, and some war veterans have lost their money. Do you think they still have confidence in such schemes, that if they invest, they'll get something out?
They don't. But look, in society, we find ourselves, facing such pitfalls. ZESCOMs was run by veterans, which was a monumental disaster. When you run any enterprise, you need to put the right systems and then employ the right people. The mistake that we did, we invested in few individuals who were more vocal, but they never had the business acumen. You know, when we were at war, we were merely general consumers. You come here, suddenly you think you can run an enterprise. So those were mistakes, but we have learned from those mistakes. Definitely. This time around, if given the opportunity, what we are going to be doing basically is to identify an opportunity, ensure that systems are in place. We don't employ, at my age, I don't want to run a business on a day-to-day basis. You employ capable, competent individuals. Hopefully, they will be our children, whom we have taught how to do the businesses. And then we let them run. We are merely policy makers and we are shareholders. We earn our dividends at any given. But I agree, and I believe general war veterans would be skeptical. Some are even complaining that, no, look, there's no more time for creating businesses because we are too old. What we want is money. But guess what? Where will you get the money? Because government has no money. No one is prepared to give you money. You have to work for it. I don't believe in me generating money for my personal consumption. I have to create a legacy, a positive legacy. We inherited all these cities and towns from Ian Douglas Smith. 43 years down the line, we have not even built a single urban settlement. It's an opportunity. When we reach out to government, it can set aside pieces of land and we create smart cities. So, ZESCOM, let's also learn. There are others who really made worse of mistakes. Even central government made certain, they came up with, what did you call that, animal, where IMF was saying, yes, sir. So that's another monumental mistake, because we had already believed that Europeans or the Westerns would create an economy. We have everything amongst them, including human resources. But the most unfortunate thing is we don't believe in ourselves. So this time around, under our executive, we are hoping that we can innovate and bring about a different product that can guarantee the future of society and veterans at large.
And finally, as a war veteran yourself, you look at the journey that you went through, going to war and coming back, and where we are as a country. Do you have any regrets?
I do. I do, because unfortunately I never had the opportunity to be the one directing how this country should work. Like I said, I volunteered and risked my life. I recall at some point in time, more than once, I escaped Smith's onslaught. They came and attacked us. And at some point in time, there was one big guy who used to drive Umtala. He was shot when he wanted to go under a Land Rover. He couldn't go because of his size. And I took advantage and hid. His blood was flowing. And then I just smeared myself so that. And Ibunu came and kicked me. I'm trying to emphasize this because you can see the sacrifice. I could have deserted, but I was more determined. I said, let's soldier on. We were not being paid. We ate horrible food, and we were living in squalor, but that was for to bring about independence in this country. Now, looking back, I ask myself in the first place, why did we even participate in the struggle when we are not enjoying the fruits of our sacrifice? That's the regret that I have.
Thank you very much, Babu Mathibela. That was the chairperson of the Zimbabwe National Liberations War Veterans Association, Andrease Mathibela, talking to us about the association, but some of the hopes and, of course, the challenges that they're facing as war veterans. And, of course, this is an ongoing conversation. There's a lot that is happening that we cannot discuss in one program, but I'm hoping that this is the beginning of the many conversations that we're going to have with war veterans as they embark on this journey to restructure their organization, but also try and address the welfare of the war veterans. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. Let's meet again in other programs.